So I've been a fan of FromSoftware's games for a few years now, and their next project coming out in just a little over a month is Armored Core 6. And when they announced this game, I had pretty much the same reaction as everyone else. Wait a second, so there's an Armored Core 1 through 5? The game has had me increasingly interested over the last year, so I figured it was finally time to sit down and see what this was all about by playing the original. Armored Core is a third-person mech shooter developed by FromSoftware and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation back in 1997. The game starts with a screen of text. This is the only test that we give people who want to become a Raven. You must battle against the opponent AC and survive. If you survive, you will be considered a Raven. That's all. Good luck. The game then throws you into combat against two other ACs or Armored Cores and lets you figure out the controls and how to play completely on your own. So let's just start there and rip the band-aid off early. These controls are some of the worst that I've seen in my 20 years of gaming. First of all, this game was released before the DualShock controller came out, which was the first ever dual analog stick controller, so the game uses tank controls. Which, for those unfamiliar, means that pressing up or down on the D-pad will move your character forward or backwards relative to the direction that they are facing, and left and right on the D-pad will simply rotate them left and right respectively. Armored Core does have strafe buttons, but these are bound to L1 and R1 respectively, meaning that the buttons to step left and right are on your bumpers rather than on your D-pad. Then there's the aiming controls, and this is where the largest issue is. To aim left or right, simply rotate left or right with the tank controls, and that part is easy enough. But enemies in this game can fly, so to aim up or down, you'll need to use L2 to look up and R2 to look down. That's right. I shouldn't need to explain to you why aiming up and down with the triggers of the controller is beyond awkward and takes an absurd amount of time to get used to. Even now, having finished the game completely, I still don't have the vertical aiming down at all. Anytime the enemies start to move really fast and like jump up in the air and let gravity take them back down, I just end up aiming all over the place. But I eventually learned to get good because the game simply won't let you progress if you can't learn. It is still a FromSoftware game after all. Speaking of classic FromSoftware design, the story is handled in that now iconic, we have this deep, well thought out and engaging world, but we're gonna make you work a little to really get an idea of what's going on here. So for the sake of time, let me just give you a quick rundown of the basics. Armored Core takes place in a distant future where the vast majority of Earth's population has been wiped out by a cataclysmic war known as the Great Destruction. The immense amounts of pollution and radiation left behind by this war forced the remaining survivors to live underground. In this time, corporations have provided for this remaining population, developing livable underground cities for them, but becoming increasingly powerful as a result of humanity relying on them. We play as a Raven, a combat mercenary who pilots a mech, doing contract work for whoever will pay us the most money. Which then naturally takes us into the gameplay loop, which is very simple, but also fairly addictive. You go to the mission board and find a contract that you want to fulfill, go and complete that mission for whatever company or organization provided it to you, and get paid. With the money that you get paid, you can now afford new parts for your AC. And the customization here is actually really impressive considering that this is a PS1 game. There are a total of 138 different parts that you can buy from the shop, and you can mix and match them to put together an AC that fits your playstyle however you want. And just to give you a basic idea of how different your builds can get, let's talk about the leg parts real quick. There are biped legs, which are your typical two-legged affair. There's quad legs that can be used to carry more weight for the other parts of your mech, or you can get very lightweight quad legs that will make you a speed demon on the field. And there's even tank tracks, which are substantially slower than everything else, but of course, can carry the maximum amount of weight possible. What legs you use will completely change the way that your AC controls and functions, and these sorts of considerations go into every piece of hardware that you equip your custom build with. Your AC honestly ends up feeling like this very advanced kit of adult Legos. I mean, I have recordings where I just sat in the menu mixing and matching various parts, changing the custom paint job, whatever it was that I was doing for upwards of 15 minutes at a time. And one of the best things about the customization is that you can sell parts back to the shop for the exact price that you paid for them originally, meaning that there is literally no loss to experimenting with different builds and ideas. But once you've got your AC put back together, it's time for another contract. And one of the things that caught me most off guard about Armored Core was just how interesting these contracts could be story-wise. For example, one of the earliest ones that I got in my playthrough was one where civilians were protesting for better pay, and they had taken over a bridge and refused to leave that bridge until corporations improved their quality of life. The city guard couldn't just go in and use lethal force on them, so instead they paid me 14,000 credits to go and handle it for them. And the civilians' crudely weaponized cranes and makeshift mechs were of course no chance for me, so I steamrolled through this entire bridge and came out 14,000 credits richer. That is until you realize that you don't get paid the entirety of that amount. Well, you do, but then you have expenses such as replenishing all the ammunition you just used or repairing the damages done to your AC. There were even some contracts in this game that despite me completing them properly, I suffered a net loss overall because the expenses outweighed my payment. And that's another part of what makes Armored Core's world so interesting. They managed to turn you, the player, into a wage slave to the corporations giving you these contracts. Oh, and if you fail one of these contracts, unless it's one of the very few that is completely integral to the main plot, you'll just fail. You'll have to pay all those expenses the same way you would normally, but you won't get paid if the conditions of the contract aren't met. And beyond that, you won't get to try again, you just take the financial hit, often putting you into debt, and then move on with the rest of your playthrough. There is no retrying contracts over and over again until you finally beat them, you just have to take that hit and keep moving on. And I have to bring this one up just for anyone who's played a Soulsborne game before. There is a poison level, because of course there is. There's a contract you can get later into the game that has you going down into a military base that has leaked chemical weapons that are so strong they even eat through the metal of your AC. So the entire time that you're down here, you're continuously taking damage. Here I was thinking that the Poison Swamp tradition had started back in Demon Souls, but it was here in Armored Core all this time. And that being said, if Armored Core has one crippling flaw, it has to be the level design. Early on in the game, it's perfectly fine because the earlier levels are genuinely just like 2-minute long bite-sized combat sections. But as the game goes on, the levels increase in size and complexity, and the last few missions on their own are an absurd increase in length and difficulty. I haven't felt a difficulty spike this strong in a game in a very long time. I spent as long on the last 3 missions alone as I did the entire rest of the game up to that point, and for reference, there are about 30-some missions in Armored Core. Especially the last mission, where it is so long that it is the only level in the game that had to be split into 2 parts, complete with a loading screen transition. Not only that, but FromSoft also forgot what game they were making halfway through this level, and have a platforming segment that I'm not exaggerating when I tell you it took me 20 minutes to get through it the first time I attempted it. I mean, look at this. This game's camera and controls were not meant for a room like this, and I didn't make it any easier on myself by going into the level using tank tracks. And oh boy, if you fail and fall off of one of these moving blocks. And then there's the final boss of the game. In the menu between missions, you can actually go and see the top 10 ranking ACs and their pilots. And the final boss of the game is 9ball and his pilot Hustler 1, the #1 ranked AC throughout the entirety of the game. And I'll just let you take a look at one of my attempts at fighting him so that you can get an idea of how this goes. Yeah, so he's the top ranking AC for a reason. But eventually I defeat 9ball, move past him through the tunnels, and then I encountered another identical copy of him. At this point, I was beyond confused because if I literally just killed the guy, how did he pop up again and kill me? Eventually, after who knows how many attempts at this 20-minute long level topped off with an overpowered final boss, I decided to do something that I've never done in a FromSoftware game. I gave up. That's right, I ran past 9ball, I ran past the second 9ball, and I ran straight into the final room of the game, where a giant supercomputer begged for its life as I shot it. It was at this moment that it clicked for me. There's more than one 9ball, but there's not more than one Hustler 1. 9ball never had a human pilot. It's piloted by the artificial intelligence in this computer. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this realization instantly made all of that frustration go away for me. It was just such a cool moment that it pulled me right back into having fun with the game. Nineball was blatantly overpowered because the guy wasn't even human. Now, does that mean that it's fun to fight him? No. But was it easy enough to run right past him and finish the game? Yeah. So I'm willing to overlook this, not entirely, but just a little bit, because it was another one of those moments that made me realize just how cool and interesting the world of Armored Core really is. Overall, it's a game that has a lot of creativity to it and a lot of ideas that I really loved, but the controls and the late game balancing make it hard to really fall in love with what we got here. I do, however, strongly look forward to checking out more of the series and of course the release of Armored Core 6 next month. And while I find it hard to recommend that most people play it, I definitely recommend that if any of the ideas on display here pique your interest, to keep a close eye on Armored Core 6 when it releases, because going back to that trailer, I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that made me love this game in the moments that I did. Overall, I'm going to give Armored Core for the PS1 a 5.7. But what do you guys think? Have you played Armored Core? Do you have any thoughts on it after watching the video? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to go ahead and leave a like, a comment, a subscription, anything to let me and the algorithm know that you did enjoy. It helps me out a lot, so I really appreciate it. On top of that, feel free to let me know if you're interested in any more Armored Core coverage over the next month or so before the new one comes out, because I'm probably going to be checking these games out anyway, so it's just a matter of whether or not I make the videos on them. And if you're looking for more videos like this one, then maybe you'd enjoy my last video where we talked about why people nowadays hate Dead Island so much. I'll have that linked right here on screen.